So hello everyone. Today we have our special guest Sandeep Alur with us on the show. Welcome Sandeep, and thanks for attending this and helping out the newcomers. To
Thanks so much, Anuja. I think thanks for having me. Pleasure being here.
it's a pleasure. So just to start with, Sandeep, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and your current roles
Sure.
and responsibilities?
So I work for Microsoft. I have about 22 years of industry experience. Over 2 decades. It sounds a lot of experience here. So at Microsoft, I had this very unique center called Microsoft Technology Center. It's an experience center, and bulk of what I do is talk to customers, partners, and help them on their digital transformation journey. I think the best part of my job is I get to meet one customer every single day. So my learning dominantly happens from there. But otherwise, have been a techie right from my year one in the industry. So even today I code. You can call me a hands-on architect, though I head a specific unit in Microsoft. But I love coding. That's my passion.
Great. So tell us, how did you get into this field of analytics?
Yeah, I think this was probably a hit refresh moment for me personally in my career. It was, if you look at it, right? So in 2017, that is the time when I made a switch towards analytics. This is also a time where, if you recall, a lot of trends in the area of big data, artificial intelligence, blockchain, IoT, they were all emerging. And it was also a point in time where we felt, they're not in isolation, they're all connected somehow, right? And my attention went towards big data to a greater extent. Second, I work on Azure, so I saw a dominant innovation happening in the area of advanced analytics. It was also a time where we saw bulk of cognitive services that were put to production, right? We never saw them before. And cognitive services are pre-built AI, right? In the area of computer vision, language, speech. Now, I got to play around with them a lot, and I think that specific area intrigued me to a greater extent. The art of possibility, especially computer vision, right? And my interest started developing from there on, and I wanted to understand more about it, right? And having been in the air for 20 years by then, at that point in time, it is quite instinctive for me to, choose that area, which is also fast emerging. There's a lot of gray areas that time in terms of AI and what it is going to do for the society, etc. But otherwise, I think the art of possibility in the area of computer vision made me go in this direction. I would say that's the primary cause, Ranojay.
Great. So when I look at your profile, I see that you took a conscious decision at a time to invest significant amount of your time as well as your money, right, towards attending a formal program.
Yeah.
In business analytics that spanned over a year, and it was one of India's premier institutions. So can you please let us know why you decided to pursue something like this?
Yeah, it was 18 months, to be frank. I can't forget that, because for 18 months, every single Saturday was dedicated for learning, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I think if there's one primary cause, Raja, it is the hunger to stay relevant. I would say that's a primary driver for me. Right? Having spent 20 years in the industry that time, the question was, what next? How do I stay relevant like I've been for the next decade? Right? It's a point in time question that popped up in my head, and it was very uncomfortable for me that time, because yes, my skills are there for sure, which has made me stay in the industry for 20 years, 2 decades, but it's the pace of innovation is dramatic these days, and it's very difficult to keep pace with everything. So yes, I think for me, the need to stay relevant also brought in an element of, yes, I need an academic intervention, which makes it real, which makes it structured, and also basically I would say a disciplined approach to learning is what I was looking for. Because all of us self-learn, right, every single day, but I wanted to bring in some structure to it so that learning amplifies. So crux of it, Sanjay, is basically the hunger to stay relevant, nothing else. That's the primary driver for me. And by the way, one last point which I missed, I always wanted a premium institution in my career as I would say not a tick mark, but yes, all of us aspire to code that I'm from so and so. But for me, learning was primary. But secondly, you know what? While I'm taking this path, why not look at premium institutions in the country? And that was the reason why I joined ISB, and it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So that brings me to the next part of the question, Sandeep. That of course, the best investment anyone can make is in oneself, right? And going into such big institutions and getting into a formal program. But there are some students, and their question towards you would be that if they are not able to afford that kind of a money right now, right, to get into these, I think, a little expensive or the higher end courses, with the large amount of information that is now available online, right, across different free mediums, different big technical giant organizations that are providing the learning paths. Do you think it is possible to train oneself for free? And if it is, then what would be your advice? How should a newcomer approach that arena where it's not that structured, as you mentioned, as one of the top academic institutions? But how should one approach that free learning path?
Got it. I think my response is yes and no. Yes, because there is enough content out there. Probably 100 times more than what I saw in 2017, 2018. To answer, when I say yes, it's possible for one to learn without paying from the pocket, right? Number one. I would say no, because each of us have been operating self-learning mode, being in the IT industry for a long time. Now there is something called the curriculum that ties it all together. A piecemeal learning won't help us get to specialization. Right? That's number one. Number two, the amount of learning you'll do while interact with peers, something you can't quantify that. Because when I sat in a classroom with 50 people and other section 100 people, now the amount of learning that happens when you hear from others, when you interact with others, when you network with others, is significant. I think, right? But more than anything else, when you do self-learning, you're learning a specific technique, specific technology. But when you have an academic intervention, I think what happens, in my personal opinion, is a personality shift. Because you observe others, how, you're all like-minded people trying to learn something new as a cohort. But learning the subject versus collective personal growth is what I would probably say yes and no when I said it earlier. Right? Of course, learning, it can happen on its own. I'll just quote a simple example, right? For advanced analytics, especially data science, right? The foundation is mathematics, right? To what extent will you go and learn mathematics if you're doing self-learning? Now, what is there a set itinerary that you craft for yourself? If you can build your own itinerary and stay disciplined, nothing like it. Then the answer is a big yes. But for me personally, I couldn't do that. And having spent 20 years that time in the industry, I definitely wanted a nice pause to my career in terms of learning and look back as to what have I done so far and what I want to do next. And hence an academic intervention was very critical. Hope I answered your question.
So that you did, and in fact, you threw in that different perspective to it, because a lot of times we hear answers like yes, it is, or it is not. So that different perspectives of yes and no would be very helpful for the youngsters, I believe. But so let's say somebody still embarks on this path and tries to do it on his or her own. There's actually so much of noise when you say so much of information is available, but there's so many choices that people are spoiled these days, right? So you have these tech giants like Microsoft, Oracle, Google, and so on. They have their own learning paths towards their certifications. One can go that way. There are all these free course institutes like Coursera, Udemy, and those platforms there. And then, of course, the communities like Kaggle, or now even the very, very premier institutes like IIT, IIM, and even they have realized this great potential in this area. They're coming with all these part-time and full-time courses. So with so much of choices available, how does one approach, you think, when you're advising one of the newcomers, that how do they approach something like that?
Wonderful. It's a good question. In fact, I personally went through this myself, right? Which route should I take? There are multiple solutions to a problem, right? Which solution would I choose? So quickly, all the certifications that any of the big giants offer that you mentioned, any of the certifications that one opts for on platforms like Udemy, Coursera, they're all essential as to continue your learning journey after you have a formal education that you do, right? It's like this, right? We all do undergrad, post graduation as a formal education, post which to keep that that urge to learn, and also for self validation, you do these certifications. So for me, doing, let's say, Microsoft or Google or any other certification is a point in time validation of my skills. That's not an accreditation I would probably boast about, time and again. What I will probably look for is a knowledge which will give me a massive leap into my learning cycle, right? The certification is not a giant leap. Certification is probably a step forward, right? If my guidance is, if anybody wants to fast track learning, or rather look for a giant leap in their learning cycle, then a formal approach to education is essential. After that, to maintain, sustain your learning, right? See, even today, after my, I would say post-graduation in data science, I still do certification from time to time, because that's essential to stay current and stay for future. What has happened is past, right? That knowledge, changes every single day, right? So, long story short, I think all the certifications you mentioned, be it Kaggle, be it Udemy, be it AWS, Azure, Google, etc., they are essential as you go through your learning path. But that is not sufficient for one to call themselves specialist, right? You might probably be generalist to some extent, but specialization comes with a significant academic intervention and a formal training program for a longer duration. Because I say longer duration because there is that time that you need to give for yourself to learn, and then work towards specialization.
So that concludes the part 1 of this episode. But hang on, keep watching this space for the part 2 and the conclusion of this episode. In the meantime, if you like our content, you feel this is useful towards your data science journey, then please subscribe, like, and share this content with your friends and other aspiring data scientists. This will encourage us and help us to bring more useful and meaningful contents for you in future episodes. Keep watching. Thanks a lot.